Standard Time from where we are. So we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Tabitha.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Just making sure that our audio is still working. And, of course, Rachel, please be my eyes and ears. Can you see our screen?
Yes.
Great. Perfect. So before we jump into this, just to give you a heads up, of course, Rachel and I are kind of perfectionists. So we have gone through this presentation a few times, tested the audio, tested the timing. This morning we noticed a tiny bit of a delay in the GoToWebinar platform. So we've made some minor adjustments to kind of support those delays. They're small, folks, not huge, not noticeable. We just wanted to point them out to you. So we're going to do our best to work around them and keep things moving. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So most of you have been on webinars with Rachel and myself before. Just in case this is your first time, my name is Tabitha Addison. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Training here at AAG. And my partner in crime is the lovely Miss Rachel Pope. And Rachel is the Senior Learning and Development Manager over here. So, few kind of mechanics. You're all used to the system, but just in case you're newer to GoToWebinar, as we go through the session, because we have such a high number of participants, we are going to go ahead and keep you muted. But as we're going through it, should you have any questions, please just feel free to type them right there into the questions box, and we will both be monitoring that panel to see what kind of questions are coming in. If you like to have full screen, full view of the presentation, go ahead and click on that little box that's highlighted for you there. And if you want that panel to get out of the way, just click on that orange arrow and it will simply get out of your way. So our agenda for today is really short and sweet and above all, simple and effective. So what we're here today really is just show you the easiest ways here today to get paid quicker. Things that you can control on your side of the business to get paid quicker. Because our session today really comes down to just this. So we want to, of course, show you the money. And, of course, that's why you're in the business that you're in, right? So you may be thinking to yourself, well, what is it? What's the secret? Well, here's the great news. Okay? It's just this. So by spending a few minutes, right, with each submission, right at the beginning, to ensure that these items that we're displaying for you in this pie chart right now are included, this is going to get you moving into underwriting on the same day. In fact, on average, about 4 to 6 hours from submission. So that's the good news, right? The better news is that Rachel and I are going to spend a little bit of time right now with you going through the most common reasons, showing you what you can do to kind of elaborate on those reasons, get them into us on time, and then quickly review the rest of the information.
All right. So basically at this point, we're looking at the most common top 3 reasons your file will come to a screeching halt if it is not included in your submission. So we're going to talk about proof of age at 16% of that piece, the appraisal at 12% of that, and Social Security number verification at 9% of the incomplete that we receive. So all that we're asking, so I'm looking at proof of age. Let's talk about the biggest piece of the pie, right? We know that this is an important part of the HECM loan. 16% of our files on average are missing this insufficient proof of age. So let's take a look at some ways that you can help out on that. So basically we have one of the primary qualifying factors is the age, right? 62 years and over. And 16% of that is missing when we go to review the file. It's just pretty simple. Just include one of these documents that is on the screen in front of you, making sure, of course, that it's legible. That's really important. And that is your proof of age. The appraisal report is the next piece at 12%. So when we look at this, again, collateral, pretty important. We want to have that appraisal included. Let's look at how we can make that happen. So one of the first things that we need is that for our broker partners who are on with us today, please be sure that the AMC has sent us the appraisal. A best practice.
Rachel,
Yeah.
Just, again, we talked to the group a little bit about kind of a delay up front. So right now what we're seeing is the pie, there you go. Now it's caught up with you, just so that you know that's where our timing is. So now we can see your appraisal bullet points. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So now that we can see those, so for those broker partners on the call with us today, let's make sure that that AMC has sent us the appraisal, right? Pretty important. And one of the best practices that we found is that just ask your AMC or appraisal management company to copy you on that email. Then you're going to see that it's sent to us prior to submission. For our principal agent partners on the call, let's be sure that that XML file is uploaded into RV along with the appraisal at the time of submission. So as we move on to the third biggest piece of the pie, you should be noticing that these are quick and easy fixes that will make all the difference, right? So Social Security verification, pretty important, just like the proof of age. With all mortgages, as you know, that Social Security number has to be verified. So when we go through this, the simple ways that you can have that in the file is just by including a copy of that legible Social Security card. One of the things we see a lot of is that maybe it's not legible, or maybe they took a picture of it and it doesn't quite come over on our end. Just take a moment to check that it is. Provide a Medicare card. Print out from the Social Security Administration. You can see that list here on the screen of those documents that you can provide in order for us to move the file forward. So those are the top three. We're going to now segue into what we can look at for the rest of the pie chart.
So we've got just a little bit more of a delay on your screen. If you want, there we go. All right. So that delay that we were talking about, folks, there it is, as promised. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the rest, right? So that we can follow this along all together pretty easily, we're going to kind of look at it in a clockwise perspective. So we're going to start there on the right-hand side on that orange sliver of the piece of the pie that's labeled completed 4506T. That's where we're going to start. So speaking of that, the completed 4506T, 6% of the files that come in don't have this. This is important to verify the tax transcripts, right? So then if we keep moving around in a clockwise format, now we're looking at the title report, which represents 8%. 8% of the files, again, that we receive is missing this. Now, this is going to ensure, right, we need to ensure that your full preliminary title report is present in the file. Without it at submission, we have no way of knowing what, if anything, has been recorded against the property. And as you can appreciate, that will not work for underwriting, right? So moving to the next one, when we're talking about the confirmation on the margin and the rate change, represented by 3% of incomplete files. Now, we appreciate the rate or margin may change. We're just looking for confirmation of the change in the file so that we can be sure that the loan reflects the correct rate or margin.
And then we're going to keep just working our way around. One of the other pieces now is the signed and dated 92900A, taking up 9%. Again, a pretty big percentage of that missing in the file. So this is important because it's part of the application, right? It's an addendum that's required by HUD to be signed and completed by all parties. Next, we have the completed counseling cert, 8%. Wow, that's a really big deal, right? We all know that the borrower has to take counseling and is required to do so, and so that should be one of the first things we're looking for in the file to make sure that it's there. So why would you submit that loan without the counseling cert? Then we have loans to be transferred to AAG in FHA Connection. Basically, one of the quickest things that you can do prior to submitting your file is just to double check and make sure that that case number is assigned to us. This is going to give us access, of course, to FHA Connection and make any changes that are required. Income documentation, again, a pretty big percentage. 8% in general of our files submitted don't have any source of income in the file. So we have to have this to show that the borrower meets the residual income requirement and, of course, prove that effective income. So Social Security awards letter, W-2s, pay stubs, whatever is applicable for your borrower, go ahead and just ensure that that's in the file.
So as you can see, as we're kind of making our way around the pie chart, the cool thing about all of this is that they're easy fixes. They're things that we know that we need to know, But sometimes we just kind of get, we get excited, we get motivated, we want to get that loan in the door, and sometimes just kind of miss these simple steps. So moving right along, we're over now talking about the certificate of occupancy. So this one, just a 2%, but still 2% is still 2%. So on this one, for new build transactions, right, for new build transactions, we look for the certificate of occupancy to ensure that it was completed prior to application, and that will ensure that the file meets the FHA guidelines, right? As much as we all want to do things for one another, we are still held to FHA guidelines. Moving right along, equally at 2%, we're talking about the earnest money deposit. So a big piece of a HECM purchase is to show where the earnest money came from and the proof of deposit.
That's right. So now, if we continue on, we're going to go back up to 8%. And when we're talking about a completed 1009, right? 1009 is our loan application, as we know. So in the forward world, it's a 1003. Reverse world, it's a 1009. So what we're looking for here is that those 5 data elements or 6 data elements are completed on the 1009 to actually make that application within compliance. So you're probably thinking, well, what are those data elements? What do I need to know? Well, it includes your address, your loan amount, your income that the borrower is using, the estimated property value, their name, of course, you want the name on the application, and their Social Security number. The next one, purchase contract, 1%. Now, this is 1% of all HECM for purchases that are submitted to us. Believe it or not, the contract has to be in there, and we receive files all the time without the contract being present. So this is going to help us understand what parties are involved, if the contract meets, again, HECM and HUD guidelines. Now, the last piece there is the attestation form, 2%. This is only really applicable when you're using DocuSign, which is an electronic vendor that we accept. That would be used to do the initial application package. So this can be signed, and you can include it with the submission, and of course, you are signing it as well. So from an incomplete perspective, this is everything that you need to know, and we have now reviewed it in a bit more detail.
You had me at get paid quicker.
So some other things to consider. Tabitha, are we still on track here on your screen?
We're still looking at the pie chart.
Okay.
So just waiting on your next slide to pop up. There you go. So we heard the audio, but we didn't see her lovely face. Now we see her lovely face. So we do have a few questions coming in, but we'll go ahead and grab those in a minute
Okay.
once you get to the next area.
All right. And I have transitioned successfully.
You are on other things to consider, and we're just waiting on the loan submission form populating.
Okay, perfect. So basically, before we finish up here today, pretty simple, right? We're going through those top reasons, and we want to give you a few more tips as you go through this to help ensure that the rest of the process is up to par. And up to this point, we have just talked about incompletes on that submission package being sent to us. So with that, sanity check, Tabitha, is that submission form on the screen?
It is.
Okay, perfect. So this is our submission checklist. Pretty important that this is fully completed and has to be put into that submission package, right? Easy, fillable PDF. And you can utilize this checklist to make sure that the required documents that we need are actually in the package. So you can just check them off and do a quick double check.
Hey, I just got some good news for one of our participants. They said the good news is the attendees aren't seeing the delay.
Oh, awesome.
That's a good thing. Just that. Thank you, Karen, for letting us know that. So, yay, carry on.
Woohoo! So another piece of that is our lender support team, and they are a great resource. So you can ask them questions, run scenarios. Maybe you just want to double check, hey, is this legible on your end? They can absolutely look at that for you. So just take a moment, take a note of their contact information on the screen, and just jot that down. And then in addition to that, Tabitha, you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be sending out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always direct you to our lender support team because there's such a wealth of knowledge, as Rachel said. Please also keep in mind that after this session, we're going to be sending you a few things, right? We're going to be sending you a copy of the presentation. We're also going to be sending you a job aid that summarizes and supports everything that was covered throughout the presentation. And just for good measure, we're going to resend you a copy of that submission checklist, because really it just makes it very simple to make sure that everything that we've covered on the pie chart is completed.
Perfect. We've covered lender support. Another thing is pretty important when you're submitting your file, like your initial submission, or even conditions after that, your underwriting conditions. We recommend that you're bundling everything together. This is really going to help us in review time, and it also ensures that we're getting all of the documentation at one time. It really speeds up the process if everything is bundled together. Additionally to that, just take a moment, right? Look at the items you're sending. Does it meet the condition being asked for? Is everything in the new submission file that you have required, and it will move it on to underwriting? Is everything provided? Should it be provided, right? In some cases, less is more. Just make sure you're reviewing that as you go through. And then, most importantly, up front, just have that conversation with your title company of choice about whether or not they're familiar with closing a HECM loan. And this is really when we get to the finish line at the closing the loan. This can save a lot of back and forth in time at closing. I'm sure we all know we want to get that loan as closed as quickly as possible, so just make sure that title company is aware of how to close a HECM loan. So it's really just that simple. Complete. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and take any questions that we have coming over.
Yeah, so we had a few come in. I'm going to start with Charlene's, and then Charlene, before I ask your question, there was another question came in from a C guy, and Mr. or Mrs. C guy, whoever you are, going to need a little bit more information from you. You typed in certificate occupancy ? What about it? Just give us a little bit more information about how we can help you with that. And while we're waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Charlene's question. So Charlene is going back to the question on the counseling certificate. And she's sharing that we've been delayed because the date on the counseling cert signature is after the date of counseling in the face-to-face session. So she says the counselors tell the applicant not to sign the certificate until they go for the application. Will this continue to be a problem?
So that's a great question, and thank you for bringing that up, because we see that also with the telephone interviews as well. Why is it signed the same day as the telephone interview if it wasn't face-to-face? So both of these actually have the same answer, and that is up front, something simple you can do is just include with your submission a letter of explanation from the borrower explaining why that date for the face-to-face isn't matching up same day, and conversely to that, if it's a telephone interview and it's same day as well, just provide a little explanation in there. Believe it or not, this is something that HUD actually looks at, those dates matching up and why they're different. So that letter of explanation is going to push that file forward.
Excellent. Charlene, please do let us know if that helps answer your question. If you need more information or have a follow-up, please go ahead and type it in. Meantime, we'll move on to Frank. Frank is just asking, is there a different form for submissions for brokers?
So the submission form that we highlighted, and in fact will be included on our follow-up email, is the same submission form whether you're a broker or a principal agent partner. The caveat is that this submission form is for fully processed loans that have everything they need in them to submit to us.
Okay, and now we have our follow-up. Thank you. We have our follow-up from C Guy. Back to the certificate of occupancy. What is required to satisfy? Have not forwarded. Is this in the appraisal?
Okay, so when it comes to the certificate of occupancy, this is for new build properties, and we see this on HECM for purchases. They're going to go buy a new build home and they're going to do a reverse mortgage. That certificate of occupancy is issued by the inspector saying that that house is now livable, it's done, it's up to code, everything is completed. And so with that, we have to have that certificate of occupancy completed prior to you taking the application. And just a little bit more information on that is that technically HUD does not insure new build properties, so we have to have it existing at time of application.
Okay. And he's validating. He's like, new build only. Got it.
Perfect.
So it was the new build only that he was referring to.
Got it.
And then he or she, C guy, please forgive, not sure if you're a Mr. or Mrs., also paid a very nice compliment to one of our lender support team members, Tawana, referring to Tawana as AAG's secret weapon. We agree,
nice.
sir. So she is a secret weapon. In fact, goes on to state that she has technical skills and patience. And, I have to say, Mr. or Mrs. Guy, we like to think that about all of our lender support team because they're amazing, and Tawana does stand out. So we agree with you. So happy we could also clarify the question on your certificate of occupancy. Let's see. Charlene is just kind of circling back, following up with saying, kind of makes no sense on the telephone to have to do an LOE. Date signed should always be later. The cert is not received in the mail until after the date of counseling.
Yeah, so you would think that would be the case. We actually run across this a lot, where it's signed the same day counseling was done, and at most points, if you have someone with email, that counselor has been known also to email the cert right away, so they're actually receiving it same day instead of receiving it in the mail.
Gotcha. Frank is asking, what if we use you to appraise? What if we use you to process and order the appraisal? So
great question. Yep. So he's talking about the broker choice channel or processing for principal agent channel. And in that particular case, there is a different protocol for that. And the submission form is just simply a checklist, and we can absolutely include that to you as well. And there is a slightly different process for that. We would be processing it, of course, and making sure that the documents we talked about today are the ones that are included when it goes into underwriting versus you doing that up front.
So again, Frank, let us know if you have follow-up based on that answer. David Maroon, I know that name. David is saying, if someone's looking to build a house and finance it with the reverse, if we can't take an app prior to completion certificate, how do we ensure they will qualify once the house is built?
So there's a couple different things that you can do. One is they can be counseled prior to that certificate of occupancy being completed, so you can go ahead and get that counseling done. As far as qualification, we know that, right, you're looking at their credit report. You can pull a credit report prior to app. So you're going to see what kind of credit they have and if that would be a potential issue. As far as like the income qualification, you can gather, what income it would be that they would be qualifying on, and then you're not going to have really the taxes and insurance and the full expenses yet until that certificate of occupancy is completed. But you're going to get a pretty good overall picture of whether or not they're going to be able to meet that residual income requirement and, of course, have, their credit, what expenses are on there, and how does their credit history look.
Okay, again, we'll look for any follow-up on that. Rachel, we have another one of our partners that you and I work closely with, and she brings up a good point. So let me just read out the question, share my thoughts on it, and then Rachel, please keep me honest and add anything else to it. Okay. One of our other partners, Carol, is in the process of doing some of her first few loans with us, and we appreciate that when you go to do your first loan, even after all of the trainings and the webinars, that really, when the true learning comes in, and the true kind of frustration curve starts to happen, is when those first few loans come into play, right? Rachel, would you agree with that? That's really when it kind of starts to come in. So Carol's actually saying to us, it would help if we spoke more about kind of what the internal process looks like. So sometimes it's going to be unclear, right, about what really happens when the processing starts. It could be unclear that currently, at least as of right now, today, July 7th, we require the appraisal before we actually hand over the file to underwriting. Now remember that we are always working on our existing file flow to speed things up, to make things quicker, to shave off some some time while still remaining compliant, while still following HUD guidelines, while still following FHA guidelines. Because remember, a lot of the time, as much as we want to make exceptions, put things through, push things to underwriting, as much as we think it makes sense and logically we think, let's go ahead and do that, there are just certain things that our hands are tied on. So we feel the frustration along with you. So the one thing we would say, though, that even though you go through the trainings with us, there is a training online on our website that talks about the AAG file flow, right? And it talks about it from a broker perspective and a PA perspective. The great part about that is that it's available 24/7. You can go on and watch it as many times as you need. And as you're watching it, if you have more questions, write the questions down. And once again, coming full circle, reach out to your lender support team, your account executive, myself or Rachel, because that's really where a lot of the learning is going to come in. And we would much rather you be aware up front than hit those walls of frustration during the process. Sometimes it's part of the learning curve. We're just here to kind of ease the pain for you. So really becoming familiar with the internal process, yes. No high level of it up front, and then just help us, again, help us help you, right? Name of the session. Help us help you when it comes time to, I got my first loan, let's go. Almost kind of anticipate a few frustrations. Not to the point where you're going to lose your mind. That's what we're here for, right? So Rachel, if there's anything you want to add to that statement or comment, feel free.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And just, for everyone else too on the call and to Carol, basically some of this too is the less that we can bog down in the beginning, the easier it's going to go at the end, right? So if we don't want to create a traffic jam, and we can all do our part to kind of make this a smooth process, and that's what we've talked about today, including those documents up front.
So we have two more quick comments, at least right now, before we finish up. Going back to Mr. Maroon, when he had the question about if someone's looking to build a house and refinance it and we can't, how can we insure? He did have just a little bit of a follow-up. He said that there's really no way to get a formal approval pending completion from AAG. Is there?
No, there is not. Because you wouldn't technically have the application until that certificate of occupancy was complete.
And David, with that kind of thing, again, please feel free to reach out to us offline. We can deep dive on that. Anybody in lender support or Rachel, because Rachel knows everything about everything, not to put her on the spot, but she does. If you want to deep dive, but lender support does too. You want to deep dive on that a little bit, kind of, go north, south, east, or west on it, happy to do so. So two more things. A compliment from Mr. and Mrs. Guy. We appreciate that. Says he loves our webinars, that they are germane, succinct, and time respectful. Well, thank you, sir. We do our best. And then
we try.
We don't try, silly. We succeed. Sawyer has a question. And so far it looks like it's our last question. Sawyer's asking, you said that we can order appraisal through you. I was told to use Appraisal Tech. Is that the same AMC you use? If different, would you recommend we order appraisals through you? So, Rachel, I think there's a little bit of Broker Choice Channel going on, and then a little bit of the AMC list going on. So I'll let you take that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so there is two different things. One is if you're utilizing our Broker Choice Channel, which is where we process the loan for you, then we would prefer to order the appraisal on our end after you've collected the upfront documents and originated the loan and retrieved the application and everything else. So for the Broker Choice Channel, we prefer to order the appraisal on our end. If you are in fact processing the loan yourself and you're going to order the appraisal, then we do have an AMC list that is also on our website of all the AMCs that are approved with us, and you can choose from any one of those on the list to order from. And then you would handle the order, you would handle the follow-up, and anything after that. There may be instances where, right now I know of a partner who only wants one AMC used, and that would be a corporate call by your company.
All right, let me just do one more quick look. That seems to be it.
All right.
So really all that's left for us to do is to, once again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. It's a Friday afternoon. We do want to be respectful of your time, so we just finished right at the half-hour mark, which is awesome. And just give me a little bit of time to get everything done up for you, get a copy and all of the job aids over to you. And then once you get them and you have questions, remember, we're here for you. So with that said, I will wish you all a safe and happy weekend. Rachel, any final comments?
Nope, just thank you everyone for attending, and let us know if you have any questions. Happy to help.
All right, fantastic. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.